As you mentioned, this all started as something much different, a peaceful gathering to remember Dion Johnson. Now, Johnson was shot and killed by DPS on Monday. His family wants answers. Team 12's Bianca Bono has the story.
An emotional night as hundreds of people coming together to remember Dion Johnson. The 28-year-old was shot and killed by a DPS trooper Monday.
He'll give you the shirt off his back, give you his last dollar in his pocket.
Irma Johnson saying her son was an incredible father to his daughter and was loved by everyone who knew him.
Every day is something, officer-involved shooting or, something. And it's not right. It's just not right.
Now she and so many others are demanding answers. The DPS troopers at the scene of Johnson's death were not equipped with body cameras or dash cameras.
It's a lot of questions that's unanswered. It's a lot of things that I want to know that happened to my son in his last minutes of his life.
According to Phoenix police, who took over the death investigation, Johnson was sleeping in his car near Loop 101 in Tatum. Police say when troopers approached Johnson's car, there was a struggle and a trooper fired, striking and killing Johnson. They say a handgun was recovered from the scene, but provided no further details. Now, family, friends, and protesters want the police report, any highway camera footage, the officer's name, and for that officer to be fired.
I know I'm going to get justice.